Dry Creek was dry in name and truth. No mercy, no water, no room for mistakes. At noon sharp, they dragged a dust-covered girl into the square. 3 loaves of bread, no trial, just shame. "Send her to the drunk cowboy," someone sneered. And that's how Eli Carver, once a trail rider, now half limping behind a forge, ended up with a silent girl and a broken town staring at them both. She didn't cry. He didn't speak. But when the roof burned, someone ran into the fire. Was it the thief or the coward? Dry Creek baked under the late summer sun, the kind of heat that bent wagon spokes and made the air above the dust shimmer like ghosts. The town was quiet until noon, when the sheriff's boots struck the boards of Main Street and every head turned. He had a girl by the arm. She wasn't more than 16, plump-faced, freckles half hidden by grime. Her dress was torn at the hem. A loaf of bread, crushed and dry, dangled from her fingers like proof of sin. "Thief," someone muttered. Then another echoed, "It." Soon the word moved like a spark through straw. Eli Carver watched from the forge doorway, one hand resting on the anvil. Sweat rolled down his temple, mixing with soot. The bellows wheezed softly beside him. He'd seen this kind of thing before, too often. Dusty Creek didn't hang people anymore, but it loved humiliation just the same. Sheriff Briggs dragged the girl forward until she stumbled to her knees in front of the trough. "Caught her stealing from Hendriss's store," he announced. "Bread, of all things." The banker, Seth Lockwood, leaned against the water pump with that smug half-grin he wore like perfume. "No trial needed," he said. "Can't jail her. Food's scarce enough. Let her work it off." A voice from the crowd snickered. "Send her to the drunk cowboy. He's got plenty of time." Laughter rippled. Eli felt it like a slap. He shifted his stance, the limp in his right leg sharp as ever when he took a step forward. "That a lawful sentence, Briggs?" His voice came quiet, but steady. Briggs shrugged, eyes darting toward Lockwood. "Seems fair enough. She'll work till her debt's cleared." Eli spat into the dirt. "Fine. She works for me. But the next man that calls her a thief answers to my hammer." The laughter died. The girl's head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. Eli tipped his hat low, then turned and walked back toward the forge. "Move," he said, not unkindly. She followed. Inside the forge, heat swelled like a heartbeat. The air smelled of iron, oil, and smoke. Eli poured water into the trough until steam rose, then dropped a horseshoe in. "Name?" "Della," she said softly. "Della Monroe." He nodded once. "You haul water. Keep the coal bin full. Don't touch the tools unless I tell you." "Yes, sir." Her voice cracked but didn't waver. She set to work without complaint, dragging the heavy bucket, pumping air through the bellows until the flames turned bright as sunrise. Her skin flushed red from the heat, but she didn't stop. Eli noticed the blisters forming at the base of her palms. He said nothing. By dusk, the street outside had quieted. He banked the fire low and watched her scrub her hands in the water barrel, wincing. He reached for a small tin near the shelf, salve, the same he used for burns, and set it by the door. When she turned to leave, he grunted. "For your hands." Her eyes flicked up, startled. "Thank you." He didn't answer, just turned back to the anvil and struck once, steel ringing through the air like a promise. Outside, a crooked tin star hung from a nail above the forge door, swaying in the breeze. It had once been his, back when the town still trusted him to keep peace. Before whiskey dulled his judgment. Before a fall from a green colt had shattered more than his leg. Now the town called him the drunk cowboy. But as he watched Della's small figure fade down the dusty street toward the lodging house, something in his chest stirred. He poured out half his bottle into the dirt and leaned against the doorframe, eyes fixed on the horizon. Somebody had steered that girl's punishment straight to his doorstep, and Eli Carver meant to find out who. Someone wanted the forge, and now they'd found the leverage to take it. By the end of that first week, the forge had taken on a rhythm again, the creak of the bellows, the ring of hammer to steel, the hiss of cooling iron. Della kept her eyes down, her words few, her work steady. She still flinched at voices on the street, but less each day. Eli noticed. Outside, Dry Creek was cracking open like old paint. The drought had tightened its grip. Even the cottonwoods drooped. Wells dropped half their depth, and the air carried a sour tang of dust and fear. Folks turned desperate when water got scarce, and desperation was something Seth Lockwood knew how to spend. The banker's buggy appeared outside the forge one dry morning, the dust settling slow behind its wheels. Lockwood stepped down in his clean linen suit, a sheet of paper folded neat in one gloved hand. "Afternoon, Mr. Carver," he said. "I regret to trouble a working man." Eli looked up from the anvil. "Then don't." Lockwood smiled thinly. "The town's assessing drought relief taxes. Just a modest fee to ensure safety for all businesses handling fire or heat. Tax on blacksmiths during a drought?" Eli's tone stayed even. "That's new." "Territory Ordinance, Section 12, Lockwood said smoothly, unfolding the paper. "Signed by our own committee. Sheriff Briggs and I only enforce what's written." Eli wiped his hands, took the paper and studied it. The ink looked fresh. Too fresh. "I'll pay what's fair," he said finally. "But not what's made up." Lockwood's smile didn't change, but his eyes cooled. "Then you'll want to settle quick before interest builds." "Drought doesn't wait, Mr. Carver. Neither do ledgers." When he left, the forge felt smaller. Della watched him go, then turned back to her sweeping. "You gonna pay it?" "Not till I find the bottom of it," Eli said. "Lockwood don't get rich off dry wells by accident." That afternoon, a lanky boy in a store apron strutted past the doorway, holding a bread tin under his arm. "Careful, thief," he called. "Don't steal the coal." Della froze. Eli's hammer came down harder than it should have, the blow ringing long and sharp. When the boy left, Della knelt by the spilled cinders and whispered, "He works for Hendris. That's the one who said I took the bread." Eli grunted. "You took nothing." Let him keep talking. Words dry up when they hit stone. But later, when she stepped outside, she found her small savings tin crushed flat in the dust beside the trough. That evening, Widow May from the bakery arrived with a sack of flour and 2 cracked heels of bread. "Thought you might want what's left," she said, eyes flicking toward Della. "Hendris's boy's been bragging something fierce. Claims he caught the thief himself." Della's face flushed. "He lied." May smiled sadly. "I figured as much. My oven's never cooled for a soul that hungry. But that boy's mouth is writing checks his father can't cover. Maybe he'll slip." When May left, Tully showed up, a wiry old prospector who lived out past the ridge. He leaned on the doorframe, squinting at the forge floor. "You burning a new mix, Eli?" "Smells wrong." "Coal's from the same yard," Eli said. Tully knelt, pinched a pinch of ash between blackened fingers, and sniffed. "This ain't coal dust. That's lamp soot. Someone tossed oily scrap in your pile. Looked like pine shavings, wrong grain for fuel." Eli frowned. "What for?" Tully spat into the dirt. "To make a fire that don't stop when you want it to." Eli stood still for a long time, jaw tight. Outside, the sky had turned copper, the heat shimmering off the roofs. He looked toward the bank across the square, its windows bright as a watchful eye. Inside the forge, Della stacked the last of the coal. "You think someone's trying to ruin you?" Eli set his hammer down slow. "Not ruin," he said. "Own." The crooked tin star on the wall caught the dying light and glinted like a warning. Somewhere in that ash lay proof, and a way to fight back before Lockwood burned more than iron. The next morning, Eli dug through the back shelf where rust and memory gathered thick. The old blacksmith's ledger sat under a horseshoe mold, cracked but intact. He dusted it off, thumbed the pages. Most of it was iron prices and wagon jobs, but near the middle, in faded ink, sat a town charter receipt with a clerk's stamp dated 5 summers back. Drought clause, tax exempt if blacksmith serves public utility, pumps, wagons, well levers. Eli exhaled through his nose. That old smith, Gus Henley, hadn't just been handy with the hammer. He'd known the law, too. Eli tapped the edge of the page, thoughts forming slow and sharp. Della stood nearby, grinding soot from the hearth with sand and a wire brush. Her knuckles were red, and her braids stuck damp to her neck. She looked up as he crossed the room. "Take this down," he said, handing her the ledger. "Copy it clean." Big letters, no smudges. Her brow furrowed, but she nodded. He watched her write, steady hand, neat strokes, no wasted motion. "You've done this before," he said quietly. "My mama was a teacher," she murmured, "before the fevers came through." Eli nodded once and said no more. Tully returned that afternoon with a pouch of odd metal scraps and an envelope smudged with dirt. "Was poking around my wagon for lamp oil," he said, "and I remembered something Lockwood's man Briggs said last spring. Claimed fire risk was higher near the river shops, so those were taxed first." He spit to the side. "Problem is, your shop ain't by the river." Eli turned to Della. "Get the county map from the corner drawer." She unrolled it on the anvil while Eli traced a finger from the bank to the forge. "Lockwood's applying rules unevenly," he muttered. "If we prove bias and show I qualify under that drought clause—" Della looked up. "Then the lien's no good?" Eli nodded. "And if we log public repairs, pump handles, wagon rims, each one, signed by the owner, we build a wall between this place and Lockwood's grab." Tully chuckled. "Paper shield, eh?" Never thought I'd see Eli Carver hiding behind ink. Eli's voice came low and dry. "A good anvil don't swing. It holds steady and lets the hammer wear itself out." Della smiled faintly, then turned back to her writing. "We'll need signatures." "Witnesses." Eli scratched his jaw. "Start with the widow and the pastor. They've got eyes and decent memory. Tully, check the livery. I fixed their axle last week." "What about the sheriff?" Della asked. Eli glanced at the crooked tin star on the wall. "We don't need him. We just need truth and time." That evening they lit the forge not for work, but for warmth. The fire curled soft and low as Eli added their first entry to a new book. Bucket crank, North Street well. Witness, Widow May. He wrote slow, careful, each stroke a quiet defiance. Outside, the town moved in twilight, pretending not to watch the lights from the forge. But word would spread. Della sat on the stool, rubbing salve into her raw palms. "What if Lockwood doesn't care about the papers?" Eli looked into the fire. "Then we make the town care. One honest line at a time." Somewhere out there, Lockwood was counting on flame and fear. But Eli Carver had something better now. A record, a witness, and a reason to stand his ground. The town meeting's coming, and Lockwood's smile means he's already planning his next move. The town meeting opened under the shade of the churchyard cottonwoods, A long plank table served as the podium, flanked by folding chairs dragged out from the chapel. Folks gathered in their Sunday best, though the dust still clung to boots and hems. Drought didn't care for politeness. Banker Seth Lockwood stood near the center, his waistcoat crisp, silver pocket watch glinting with every turn. He smiled wide, palms open, voice slick as lamp oil. "Progress," he said, "requires structure, regulation, fairness in taxation." Behind him, Tax Agent Briggs held, a ledger thick with numbers, and nodded like a well-fed parrot. "Dry Creek cannot support waste," Lockwood went on. "Idle properties, hazardous trades. The forge is a liability." Eli Carver stepped forward, eyes shadowed under his brim. He laid an old parchment on the table with a deliberate thunk. "Town charter," he said. "Page 7. The crowd leaned in. Della Monroe unfolded a second sheet, her clean copy of the drought clause, and read aloud. Her voice didn't tremble. "Any public blacksmith, during declared water shortage, shall be exempt from levy or lien, provided said smith renders public service free of charge." Lockwood chuckled low. Outdated. Irrelevant. The drought wasn't declared. Widow May stepped up beside Della. "Pastor confirmed it 3 weeks ago during prayer. Rain barrels empty. Town well half mud. That meets the mark." Briggs's mouth tightened. From the front row, young Jasper Hendress, the general store owner's son, shifted in his seat. His eyes flicked toward the bakery cart, where bread once disappeared too often. The same cart Della had been blamed for raiding. "I have a question," Widow May called. "What happened to that bakery ledger?" Pastor Rudd stepped up quietly, a sealed envelope in hand. This was left in the church vestibule, addressed to the next officer of peace when needed most. He opened it. Inside, a stack of handwritten statements, notes of forced sales, overpaid taxes, and whispered threats, all signed by townsfolk, dated and indexed. Lockwood's smile frayed. "The forge ain't idle," Eli added. "It's been fixing pump handles and wagon yokes." Free, logged, and signed. He held up the new ledger. The names inside, real names, real work, glinted like nails hammered into a coffin. Someone in the crowd murmured, "Truth's got a shape, don't it?" Jasper stood abruptly, face pale. "I gotta say something. That missing bread, it was me. I took it. I gave it to school friends. I didn't want Pa to find out. When he blamed Della, I let him." Silence, struck like a bell. Lockwood clapped once, too loudly. "We've all made mistakes, son. Let's not—" "Why pivot to fire hazards?" Eli asked him, calm but pointed. "You changed your tune awful quick." Briggs blinked. "The forge's woodpile. Dangerous. Could spark." Tully crossed his arms. "Funny. That ash I saw near Eli's lot, different grain. Not from his pile." More murmurs. A woman whispered, "Who'd bring strange fuel to a blacksmith's yard?" Lockwood straightened, color high. "This is theater. We came to talk tax, not accusations." Pastor Rudd shook his head. "We came for truth. Let's not pretend one fire wouldn't benefit someone ready to foreclose." Lockwood adjusted his cuffs. "This meeting's adjourned." But no one moved. The forge was still standing, for now. But every word had lit a fuse beneath the town's quiet shame. And as the crowd parted, Eli's gaze caught Lockwood's. That smile was gone. Lockwood's mask is cracking, but something oily waits in the dark. Will Eli and Della be ready when the spark jumps? By midweek, a crisp notice hung on the post outside the forge. Drought relief request. County office filed. Below it, Eli had tacked another. free pump handle repairs, and wagon bans for drought-affected families. Inquire inside. The script was neat. Della had written it, hand steady despite fresh blisters. It wasn't charity. It was ledger work. At dawn, she brought water again. Her gait was limping now, shoes too tight, heel rubbed raw, but she didn't mention it. Eli watched her pour into the barrel and offered a nod. "Take this," she said quietly, pressing 3 coins into his palm. "I baked hand pies for the widow's boy." He paid in quarters and smiles. Eli looked at the coins, then at her hands, wrapped in cloth, burned from a recent forge job. His voice came low. "You don't owe me, Della." "I know," she said, "but I'd rather be useful than sorry." Around noon, the general store clerk, Hendris, stepped into the shade of the forge's lean-to, arms folded and eyes full of bile. He caught Della outside with a sack of flour. "Bread thief's got her hands full again, huh?" She turned, still holding the sack, spine straight. "You say that again," Eli growled from behind the anvil, "and you'll leave with less than you came with." Hendris smirked and grabbed Della's wrist. "She's a liar and a thief." Always was. Eli crossed the space in 3 strides and hit the man square in the jaw. Hendris dropped like a sack of meal. Dust rose. The street fell silent. Across the way, Pastor Rudd watched from his stoop. Eli met his gaze, removed his hat, and said, "Sorry for the swing, Reverend." The pastor gave a slow nod. "I reckon truth lands better when it rings." That night, heat clung to the walls long after the sun had dipped behind the hills. Della scrubbed soot from the tools, humming under her breath. Eli had gone to cool off by the creek, needing air, needing distance from the rising whisper of fists and fire. He didn't see the figure slip around the back. A bottle clinked. A thin ribbon of oil leaked from a can across the forge wall, seeping into dry straw and curling beneath the door. The match lit in silence. By the time Della smelled smoke, the north wall was already glowing orange. "Eli!" she screamed, banging the bellows pipe. He came stumbling from the dark, shirt half-buttoned, eyes wide, just as a beam from the roof cracked loose and dropped. He didn't dodge fast enough. Wood hit metal. The roof buckled. Della grabbed the crowbar, wedged it under the beam, and heaved. "Eli!" she shouted again, voice raw. From inside, a groan. Soot fell in sheets. Sparks burst from the coal bin. She shoved the bar again, arms trembling. "Move, damn you!" A second shove. And then Eli's boot slid out. His body followed, half dragged, half crawled, as the roof collapsed behind them. They tumbled into the street, coughing, flames reaching after them like clawed hands. The forge hissed. Cinders fell. Della curled beside him, smoke rising off her sleeves, and whispered, "You can't die." "I still owe you supper." Eli coughed hard. "Make it cornbread." They lay there, 2 burned souls on the dry dirt, staring up at the stars through ash. The forge was gone, but both of them were still breathing. With the forge in ruins and Eli arrested come dawn, who will stand for them when the town looks away? Ash hung over Dry Creek like guilt that wouldn't lift. Smoke still whispered from the charred bones of the forge, curling from cracked joists and melted nails. By morning, a scorched ring blackened the ground where Della had dragged Eli free. The heat hadn't taken his life, but it had taken nearly everything else. Della sat by Eli's cot in the clinic corner of the church, his arm in a sling, bruised ribs wrapped tight. He hadn't said much since the fire. His breath came shallow. She held a damp cloth to his brow, more for something to do than need. Then boots clicked on the porch. Sheriff Talbot entered, hat low. Behind him stood Briggs, the tax agent, and 2 others in stiff coats, city clean and smug. "Eli Carver," Talbot muttered, voice not meeting her eye. "You're under arrest for assault and suspicion of public endangerment." Della stood, eyes flashing. "You saw the flames." "Someone lit that fire." Briggs raised a paper. "There's a witness says your man threatened Hendris earlier that day. Add that to his history with the bottle and, well, reasonable suspicion." "She saved his life," Talbot added, more to himself than anyone else. "And now you'll jail him?" Della's voice cracked. "While the men who tried to kill him walk free?" Eli slowly sat up, grimacing. "Let it ride, Della." She turned, blinking. "You didn't do this." He met her gaze with something steadier than pain. "Ain't about that now. They want the forge. They want the fight. Let 'em show it." Briggs cuffed Eli. The iron clicked soft, like a lie dressed in law. The men led him away, through the same streets he'd hammered horseshoes for, repaired plows and wagon tongues, the same streets where folks had looked the other way. Della watched until his back disappeared into the sheriff's office. Then she wiped her hands, tied her scorched apron tight, and stepped off the porch. She didn't beg. Instead, she walked from home to home, widows, farmers, cartwrights, and asked, "Did he charge you for your pump last week? For your wagon axle? For your chair leg?" One by one, the townsfolk shook their heads. "No, said it was drought work. Said to sign the ledger." She nodded. "Then come sign again." Before the judge rides in. Old Tully met her near the mill. "They burned it all, girl." "Then we rebuild," she said. "He's still breathing, ain't he?" By twilight, the town square came alive with motion. Not with jeers or gossip this time, but with nails, hammers, hemp rope, and stacked beams. Widow May organized the women. Tully supervised saw cuts. Boys carried rafters like honor on their backs. None spoke of guilt. They just worked. At the edge of the square, Pastor Rudd opened his worn satchel. Inside, the sealed envelope left months ago, meant for the next officer of peace. He read the first line. His brows lifted. Then he buttoned the flap and turned toward the circuit judge's route. That night, Della sat alone in the ruins of the forge. She traced her fingers over the old anvil, blackened but not cracked. Her hands still hurt, her soul more. But she remembered Eli's voice, rough as gravel. "Let the fire tell its truth." In the quiet, she whispered, "Then let the town hear it." With the town stirred and papers en route, will truth rise from the ashes, or get buried by another lie? The courthouse in Dry Creek was just a folding table on Main Street and the judge's boots resting on a crate of molasses. Still, it held the weight of justice, when it chose to. That morning, clouds dragged across the sky like slow cattle. Folks gathered in a hush, not for spectacle, but because something in them had cracked since the fire. They came with sore hands, mended pride, and maybe, just maybe, a sliver of shame. Judge Alton cleared his throat. "Bring out the accused." Eli limped up, shirt clean but collar frayed, eyes steady. His sling had been discarded. He stood tall despite the pain. Della stood beside him, a ledger cradled in her arms. Her palms still bore bandage strips, but she held them like offerings, not wounds. Lockwood leaned against the post, all smirk and polish. Briggs stood behind him, pale around the mouth. Judge Alton nodded. "Mr. Carver, you've been accused of assault and endangerment. Do you have anything to say?" Eli raised his chin. "I've got a ledger. Signed by every person I helped through the drought. Free labor. Law says that counts as public service under relief clause, don't it?" The judge gestured. Della stepped forward and opened the book. Names, dates, descriptions, all in her tight, clean script. Eli added, "Some wrote with shaky hands. Some just made marks. But everyone's true." A murmur stirred. The judge examined the book, then looked to Lockwood. This ledger contradicts the lien. Lockwood's lips twitched. Anyone could fake that. You can't trust a girl caught stealing bread. Della didn't flinch. She turned to the crowd. I was called a thief, but the ledger at Hendriss's store tells a different story. Gasps rustled through the bystanders. Eli added, check his stock. The loaves weren't stolen. They were taken by someone scared to ask. From the crowd, Hendriss's son, barely more than a boy, stepped forward. He looked at his father, then the judge. I took the bread. Gave it to friends. I lied because I was scared. The air shifted. Widow May stepped up next, holding a stained tin can and rag. I saw Briggs near the forge that night. This here's lamp oil. Came from his cart. Judge Alton held the can, sniffed. You recognize this, Briggs? The man stammered. I just... Judge Alton pinned him with a stare. Simple question. Did you spill oil near the forge? Briggs looked to Lockwood. Lockwood turned away. I was ordered to scare him, Briggs mumbled. Didn't mean for it to catch. Crowd erupted, then stilled as the judge raised a hand. He turned to Lockwood. Mr. Lockwood, did you or did you not instruct this man to set fire near the Carver Forge? Lockwood straightened. I merely mentioned the forge was old, a liability. And yet you filed to purchase it 2 days before the fire, the judge said, pulling out a document. Filed under a different name. Silence landed like a gavel. Eli spoke low but clear. A man's worth ain't in what he owns. It's in what he fixes. Della met his eye. The judge looked around. Final word, Mr. Lockwood? But Lockwood had already stepped back into the crowd, retreating like smoke in wind. Judge Alton rose. Charges dropped. Inquiry opened into misuse of tax enforcement. And the girl, Miss Monroe, is cleared of all accusations. Applause came slow, then swelled. The town may be mending, but what secrets still lie beneath the ash and ledgers, and will Lockwood accept defeat that easily? The square lingered in a hush after Lockwood disappeared, down the alley. The sound of shifting boots and nervous coughs filled the space he'd left behind, like dust settling after a stampede. Judge Alton laid the scorched ledger and the oil-stained tin on the bench beside him. Briggs, he said, voice like creaking floorboards, I'm placing you under arrest for malicious mischief and fraudulent enforcement. Briggs didn't argue. He stepped forward, hands out. No fight left. The sheriff, red-faced and slow-moving, approached, hesitated, then unpinned his tin star. He didn't speak, just held it in his palm like a man offering back what he hadn't earned. Judge Alton took it with a nod, turned to the crowd, then to Pastor Reeves. You've been the town's moral compass longer than most here have been shaving. Will you serve as interim peace officer? The pastor blinked, startled. I'm no lawman. No, the judge said gently, but you're trusted. And this town needs more trust than muscle right now. With a deep breath, Pastor Reeves accepted the star. Eli stood near the forge's charred bones, one shoulder wrapped in gauze. No one works for free, he said. You helped raise the beams again. That matters. Sign your hours. I'll repay in kind. Heads nodded. Shoulders straightened. One by one, townsfolk moved. Hendriss's boy stepped forward, holding a clean ledger. We thought maybe... He looked down, ashamed. You could use this one. Eli took it. We'll fill it with right things this time. Della, standing beside him, didn't speak. Her hands still carried the pink gleam of fresh-healed burns, but they were steady now. She met eyes without flinching, A few paces off, Widow May handed Della a tin of ginger cookies. "Not for forgiveness," she said. "You didn't do wrong. Just for sweetness." A tentative laugh rippled around them. Then, from the back of the crowd, came the last faces Della expected. Her brothers. Not bold, not smug. Just there. One held his hat in both hands. The other kept looking down. Their father stepped beside them, hollow-eyed. He stopped. "We came to see it ourselves. What you built." Eli didn't say a word. He just turned slightly, standing beside Della without touching her, but it was enough. She nodded slowly. "You can look, but you don't get to take." Her father swallowed. "We've got no home left. Not even a stove." After a long silence, Della reached into her apron, pulled out a jar of pennyroyal salve and a cloth bag of seed. "You can leave with enough to start. No more." He took them like they weighed more than pride. The pastor approached the steps. "The forge stands. Miss Monroe's name is cleared, and justice was served without guns or blood. That is no small thing." Tully sauntered forward, pulling something from his coat. A rolled map, brittle with age. "Found this buried in my tool chest. From my early mine days. Shows the water seams beneath Dry Creek. And guess what runs right under this lot?" Eli blinked. "The spring." Tully grinned. "A shallow one. But real. Been there since before most of us. That fire dug deeper than we thought." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Prior use improvement. Lockwood won't touch it now. That spring's yours by every inch of the law." People clapped, not for show, but in quiet relief. The kind of applause born from breathing easier. Eli looked to Della, then back at the forge. "Maybe it wasn't stolen," he said, voice rough. "Maybe it just needed to be reforged." With fire behind them and water beneath their feet, what future will they build? And who else still needs a second chance? The forge pulsed with new life. Fresh timbers framed the roof. The anvil, scrubbed clean, rang sharper. A shallow stone cistern hugged the back wall, hand pump humming with each turn. And the flame? It danced steady, fed by a trickle of spring water that no drought could steal. Eli stood at the threshold, wiping soot from his fingers. The collar of his shirt was cleaner now, his gait surer. He hadn't touched a drop since the fire. Not once. Della knelt in the yard, smoothing straw around Winter. Greens. Children watched, copying her hands. "Mulch keeps the water," she said softly, "and water keeps the hope." Widow May brought bread every Friday. Pastor Reeves, still wearing the tin star, though he swore it was temporary, stopped by with notes from neighbors needing ironwork. The townsfolk, once loud with shame, now lined up to trade hours, seeds, or stories. The ledger was never empty. That morning, Tully limped over with a long-handled spade. "Time to name this place," he said. Eli looked at Della, then to the newly hung sign above the doorway. Dry Creek Forge, built back better. He chuckled. Not poetic, but true. "No," Della murmured. "But sometimes plain truth is plenty." The day turned gold with late sun. Kids watered beds. A widow mended her fence hook. A boy who once mocked Della now stayed after school to polish scraps and learn bellows timing. Then, without warning, her family returned. No wagons, no parade, just her father, 2 brothers, and the sharp quiet of men too tired to posture. They stood in the yard, hats in hand. "We kept nothing," the eldest said. "Just pride. And it didn't feed us." Eli didn't speak. Della walked forward, calm. "Seed?" her father asked. She looked at his cracked boots, the hollow cheeks. "I'll give seed. And a jar of salve." He nodded. "Thank you." But I'm not your shame anymore, she added, or your trade. I am my own name. He met her eyes, then lowered his. We see that now. They left with full sacks. No promises, no strings. That night the fire glowed orange against the new stonework. Eli brought out a cedar box and set it on the table. I've been carving, he said. Small things, for folks who helped. Della opened the box. Inside, a wooden bowl, sanded smooth, her name etched on the base. A single brass rivet shone near the rim. She touched it like it might vanish. This is beautiful. I wanted to ask you sooner, Eli said, voice rough, but I was still figuring who I am without the bottle. He reached into his vest and pulled out a small ring, twisted iron, polished like silver. Della Monroe, you saved my life. You built this with me. Will you stay and keep building it as my wife? Tears welled, but she nodded. Yes. On one condition. He blinked. Name it. We teach every child that worth can't be measured in coin, rumor, or shame. Only action. He smiled. Deal. As the stars came out, the forge's chimney breathed its first winter smoke. From the window they watched the lights of Dry Creek flicker, steadier now. A sign hung beside the ledger, carved by Della. Trust is the heat. Mercy is the hammer. Truth is the steel. And just beneath it, in small letters, she was never the thief. But she stole his heart anyway. If you believe quiet courage can mend what others break, stay with us for the next ride.